There's so many things we wouldn't buy if we liked ourselves as is. And so the message that we receive is you're not good enough to determine if it's a problem eating behavior. You cannot just look at the behavior. I've noticed some things that made me start to worry about you, specifically related to your relationship with food. I would love to help you find someone who can help.
The Chronic Truth Podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The views expressed by our guests are their personal opinions and do not constitute medical advice. While we share experiences and strategies related to health, neither the host nor the guest are acting as licensed medical professionals unless explicitly stated. Always consult your physician or qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your treatment plan. Listeners assume all risks associated with implementing any information discussed on this show.
I want to take a moment to thank those faithful listeners who tune in each week to these episodes, who are sharing these on their own social media channels. You guys are the ones that are helping us build this community of support for those fighting serious chronic health conditions and feeling alone. I also encourage you to visit our website and go back and listen to a couple of the past episodes. We have a library full of knowledge, so you will find support there as well. Tonight's guest is Jessica Setnick, an eating disorder specialist who looks beyond what we eat to why we eat. Her focuses on the emotional and relational stories behind food, including how our upbringing shapes our eating habits. Jessica is best known for her concept of healing your inner eater, helping people bring eating issues out of the shadows and rewrite their relationship with food. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. I loved how you described me. I'm glowing. Yes, you did such a good job.
Love this topic. This topic, I truly believe, like I said, it's hidden in the shadows. There's so much shame, whether it's overeating or undereating about food, that I am so happy you're on to talk about this. So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm trained as an eating disorder dietitian. I've been a dietitian since 1998, so 28 years now.
Wow.
And at first I started in a pediatric hospital that was just starting an eating disorder program. I moved into private practice, and at some point I actually stopped seeing patients one-on-one because I realized my gift, even though I loved one-on-one and I was good at it, I really wanted to train the treating professionals, because everyone that came to see me would say they had been through multiple doctors, maybe even multiple dietitians. They had gone through life with this eating problem for so long, and no one had ever asked them about it. No one had ever offered help with it. And so I realized I wanted to get out and help the primary care providers really understand what eating disorders are more. And through that, I did Eating Disorders Boot Camp, which was a training workshop. It sort of morphed into private trainings for hospitals where I just train all the staff. What I learned through that is that nobody is trying to do a bad job, but education just isn't out there. I talk about dysfunctional eating behavior or disruptive eating behavior or problem eating behavior, because that takes it away from this small, tiny percentage of people who have eating disorders, which isn't actually that tiny. It's just what people think, and brings it into anyone who eats can have an eating problem. So diet culture is a specific kind of consumerism that tells us we should all be smaller, even to the point where someone who's already small needs to be super precautious in order to not get bigger. It's really skewed. And as an eating disorder treater, I saw a lot of that. People who developed eating problems because they went to a diet center or program. I won't name names, although why am I protecting the guilty? I don't know. But they would go somewhere and say, I want to lose weight, or I want to not gain weight. And instead of saying, you don't need our program, you need to go home, they would get put on a program. And because they were so small, they hardly were given anything to eat. It was a big old mess. So there's really a lot of, again, I feel like I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of money in making people think that we have to be smaller all the time.
Yep. Including commercials, the AI photographs in magazines, etc., billboards. You know, you don't see any, I don't want to say heavy set, but you don't see a normal body type unless it's geared towards a normal body type advertisement. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that has changed a little bit, but the pendulum swings back. I think that every time people make advancements as far as body acceptance or even body positivity, which is about bigger people, then there's always a swing back to, no, that's not okay. You need to be skinnier. Even if you're skinny, you need to be skinnier. It's sort of, again, it's not any one person who's like at the top of the food chain kind of making these decisions and then, like hypnotizing everyone else into believing it. But it's more of a sort of advertising taps into what we already believe to be true. So if an advertising campaign came out and said, everyone should paint their skin blue, most people would be like, that seems weird. Some people would do it, just peer pressure, whatever. But when an advertisement says something about this is an important thing so that you don't gain weight, or this is an important thing to do to help you lose weight, if we already feel that, that's how the advertising gets the hook in us, is by tapping into feelings we already feel.
You were mentioning when I was introducing you that you go back to our first dealings, our first relationships with food is how it kind of starts in the programming of what we feel about food. What do you do to change that and bring that to light?
So in the children that I'm around, I try to just be really neutral or positive about food. They say, I'm hungry 20 minutes before dinner, and I say, you have great timing. It's almost dinner time. What do you think you could have as a snack now that would tide you over and you'd still be hungry at dinner time? Like, I don't have rules like it's almost dinner time, you can't eat, or you can't have two granola bars, you can only have one, or, I just don't have a lot of arbitrary rules around food so that food just stays very neutral and positive. When it comes to working with adults, that is more about helping them sort of deconstruct all the rules that they have picked up along the way and trying to figure out which of those they want to keep and which of those they don't want to, because you didn't really have a choice about which rules you heard and followed when you were growing up. Now that you're an adult, a lot of people are still following those same rules or rebelling against those rules, either way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's not a conscious choice. So like I was saying before, we wake up in the morning and think, I'm making a conscious choice about what I'm going to eat for breakfast, whether I'm going to eat breakfast, whether my breakfast is going to be a bagel or it's going to be scrambled eggs and bacon. We think we're making that conscious choice, but so many things in our past and our present have come together to make that choice or to limit us to only a very few choices. Things like, what do you even consider food? Like, you didn't even think I might eat a grasshopper for breakfast, because in your culture, grasshopper isn't food.
Yep.
It all depends on which grocery stores you have in your area, or if you have a grocery store in your area, and which brands that grocery store carries. There's so much that is decided for you before you even wake up and make what you think is a conscious decision. And so that's what we try to get to in Healing Your Inner Eater is we start by saying, here's a circle, write your name in the circle. Here are circles around the circle, write the names of the adults that were influential in your life when you were growing up. It doesn't have to be parents. It could be parents, grandparents, could be not biologically related people, could be your kindergarten teacher, could be your neighbor. Who were people that were around when you were growing up that you were influenced by? And then we ask people to think about a few key things from that person's life. What were that person's life experiences? Not about food even yet, because sometimes when you try to talk about food, people get real defended, not on purpose, but it's almost like you can't see the forest for the trees. So we're just asking, who are the people around you and what were their life experiences like? Because once you start to think about that, well, this person went through World War II. This person was a refugee or first generation American. Once you start looking at some of that, it becomes kind of almost like you can't ignore how those things affected their eating. And how did that affect the way they talked about food and bodies? And how did you pick up on that? even if they didn't say it on purpose. And so after we ask everyone to spend a little bit of time writing those things down, we do small group discussions so that people can kind of share what they recognized, what they realized, how the experiences of their parents, grandparents, and other people around them impacted their eating. Or if you were separated for some reason from your bio parents and you had adoptive parents or foster parents, how did those people's eating experiences from their childhoods impact how they raised you with food? It gets very, very complicated when I'm trying to explain it, but in practice, it becomes the opposite. It's like becomes crystal clear all of a sudden to people why they do things.
My husband, he knows he's up for grabs here. When I first met him, he would eat with his left hand and have a cup of whatever he was drinking, tea or water, whatever. He would take a bite and then wash it down after everything. And I was like, that is, and then if you go to a restaurant with him, he's done with his water before he's even finished his food because and I was like, why do you do that? And he was like, well, that's kind of how I was raised. So, you wash your food down.
Well, I can share about my husband too, who also knows he's up for grabs. Whenever I go to a conference, people, if he goes with me and people meet him, they're like, oh, I heard about your blank, blank, blank. So he once, when early in our marriage, I was baking cookies for whatever reason. I don't remember if I was craving chocolate chip cookies or if I was baking them to bring to someone who had a happy event or something. But he came into the kitchen and he said, who's coming over? I was like, is this some kind of weird game of talk? Like I hear the words and I understand the words you're saying. I am a native English speaker, but I don't understand why you were asking me this question. And he pointed at the cookies and I was like, what? And he said, well, I just assumed you were baking cookies because someone's coming over. Well, when my mom baked cookies, it was always because someone was coming over. And it stuck in his mind because they weren't allowed to eat the cookies. There were 3 boys. And she would say, you can't have the cookies. The cookies are for company. And not that they couldn't eat any cookies, but that she knew if she let these 3 boys loose on a plate of a batch of cookies, there wouldn't be any left for company, right? So it was like, the cookies I'm baking are for, means you're having company. And so I actually divided up the cookies and made him a plate of cookies and brought them to him watching TV and said, here's some cookies, have as many as you want. And I was like, we are healing intergenerational trauma here. Now, my husband doesn't have an eating disorder. He didn't binge on the cookies. He just ate a few cookies and then was done. But in my mind, I'm thinking we're changing patterns here, right?
Reprogramming.
Yes.
Yep. And for mine, it's not a bad thing. I can have the same cup of drink, my whole dinner, plus probably dessert or whatever, and still not need a refill.
To determine if it's a problem eating behavior, you cannot just look at the behavior. You have to look at the motive and how it's impacting this person. And so, if your husband had, I don't know, let's say, chronic kidney disease and he had to limit his fluid intake. Well, this is not working, right? Our goal is simply to have people look and make that choice rather than just accidentally or, reflexively or whatever the right word is, without even thinking about it, just keep doing a behavior that's not serving anybody. Neutral is the best case scenario, right?
And when you go to dissect and know of an eating disorder, what are you looking for in the person in these groups? Is it the dynamic starting at the baseline like you were talking about, your family dynamics, and then adding to it, to their experiences?
When you're in a crisis mode with an eating disorder, and most people before they get any help are in a crisis mode. It has to get that bad before a doctor or health provider or a family member says, wow, this is a problem. We have to do something about it. So most people entering into the care of a dietitian or into treatment for an eating disorder are in crisis mode. And when you're in crisis mode, you don't have the luxury of how did this get started? That kind of thing. And if you did ask, how did this get started? What you really mean is, what brought you here? But once the crisis has been handled, once you have managed someone's emergency medical status or whatever those main issues are, then you have sort of the luxury of time to say, how far back do you think this goes? When do you remember last having a healthy relationship with food? For some people, it's never. For some people, they never remember having an autonomous relationship with food. Some people remember being shamed about their weight from very early ages, being weighed every day by their family, being weighed naked, being weighed in front of other students at school, like all kinds of shaming things related to their weight. And so when you go back that far and realize this person has never had a productive or healthy relationship with their body or with their weight or with their eating, you really are teaching someone skills almost from scratch. And that's where I said individuals with eating disorders were really my best teachers, because the things that I was teaching them, I realized after the fact, was most people never get this anyway in our diet culture. Even if they weren't raised in a super toxic diet culture environment in their home, they're still living in a super toxic diet culture environment outside the home.
This group that you created, is it online?
Sorry, when you asked your question before and you said group, I was thinking group of people with eating disorders, because Healing Your Inner Eater is not groups of people with eating disorders.
Okay.
There may be people with eating disorders in the group, of course, because eating disorders are people. You know what I mean? So only 1 out of 10 people with an eating disorder gets specialty care for it. Everyone else is just walking wounded out there, right? 9 out of 10 people with eating disorders are just sitting right next to you. So yes, there are people, of course, with eating disorders in Healing Your Inner Eater. It's just not sort of targeted that way. Someone like a group of health educators. I've taught Healing Your Inner Eater with them. And then sometimes it's just a group of people, like a church group or something like that, that kind of wants to provide it for the people that are interested. So I have not ever done it online before, but I am really excited to launch it online, because I think it could be really powerful and reach people who are not necessarily in a group. Like, it's not like NCL wants me to do Healing Your Inner Eater for all their moms and daughters. It's more like this person from Wyoming could attend, and this person from Nevada could attend, and this person from New York City could attend. So I don't have anything on the books, but when I do, healingyourinnereater.com is the place where I will be promoting it. And so anyone who wants to get on the list for that, if you go to healingyourinnereater.com, I'm almost sure there's a place where it says sign up to find out more. And of course, you can always go to Jessica at jessicasetnick.com, and then immediately there's a pop-up that says sign up for my newsletter. Voila, there you go.
If a parent or a friend notices someone struggling with food and it's a parent, how do you suggest them seek help for this person?
If it's a parent to someone struggling with their eating, whether they're a parent, friend, or family member, or anyone else, as a friend or family member or colleague, it isn't your responsibility to solve the problem. The best thing to me to approach the person is not at a mealtime, not, let's say, at work, like something that is kind of neutral and they don't have to feel embarrassed or like they have to avoid, right? Just a very safe opportunity. You could even write it in a note if you wanted to, if that felt safer. And to say this: I've noticed some things that made me start to worry about you, specifically related to your relationship with food or your relationship to your body. I would love to help you find someone who can help. Allow me to do that. And that is all. You do not need to be specific, like, I saw you leave the table and I think you're throwing up, right? That is like a sure way to get someone to deny, right?
And shut that door on you. Yep.
Shut the door. Right. You definitely don't want to say, like, if you're a parent, like, you're going to be punished unless you eat, right? It's not that kind of thing. It's all about getting professional, specialized help to get an assessment and to recommend the correct treatment. So to me, if that person were to come back to you and say, well, actually, I'm already seeing a dietitian or I'm already talking to my doctor about it, that closes the door, because that is what you wanted to know. They are getting help. You can always say, well, you know what? Thank you for sharing that with me. And I just want you to know I'm a safe place for you. Still, your same friendly, safe person. The more of a chance they actually would come back to you if they decide they want help, because they know you're not going to mention it every time they see you, right? You're just
Which is what they probably get elsewhere.
Yes. And if they say, I've been kind of thinking that myself. Yeah, maybe I should do something. The best thing you can do to help someone is say, you know what? Let me do an internet search for you and see if I can find who's good in our area. Or let me ask my doctor who's good in our area, right? The best thing you can do is make it so easy for them to walk in the door. Would you like me to go to the appointment with you? Would you like me to be there and take notes for you? Anything you can do that says, I am not judging you. I am here for you.
I love
And
you.
anything that facilitates them getting to the appointment that might be very scary for them. That is the best, absolute best a friend can do. It's not about sort of enforcing help, helping them get the professional help that they need. And I feel like that is such a gift. And there's something else. If your friend says, not interested, not doing it, not my problem, blah, 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 and you want to go to the next level, I would really encourage you to make an appointment with an eating disorder specialist in your area or telehealth, whatever you decide. I personally think eating disorder dietitians are fantastic. It could be an eating disorder counselor. You make an appointment for you and say, listen, I know you don't see the same things I see and you don't have the same concerns I have, but I'm worried about you. And so I'm going to talk to someone, and if you wanted to come with me, I would welcome that. I will say it's a 50-50 shot that someone who knows you are going to talk about them, they say, well, you can't go to a counselor and talk about me. You say, you know what? You don't have to be there. I'm not going to mention your name. I'm just going to say, I am struggling with a friend who seems to be having trouble. Can you give me some skills and strategies to take care of me, who is going down a bad path, and still be there for your friend? It's really okay. And maybe even setting an excellent example for your friend of basically when the skills we bring to the table are not adequate to solve something, we get a professional involved. So you facilitating your friend getting to where they need to go is the biggest gift that you could offer to someone. And I know that's not what people were expecting to hear.
That's beautiful. Is there an age range that is more critical than others?
If someone is under 18, then you're talking about a situation where they are a minor and someone is responsible for their medical care. So if you have a concern about someone who is a teen or a child, then it is very appropriate to speak to an adult. Again, the goal is still to get them to professional care, but we're not necessarily asking them to do that. We're asking their caregiver to step in. And unfortunately, sometimes, hopefully very occasionally, the caregiver themselves is really not aware. I am the first person who will tell you that the first time you say something to someone, it may not sink in very much at all. And so in that case, you may have to revisit it and say, this is what I've noticed. Have you noticed that too? Let's say your kid came to you and said, my friend, this kid, my age, someone that they see every day and seems to be functioning well is having a problem. And I'm telling you because it just happened to me last week.
Yep. And
Unfortunately.
from, personal experience, that's huge. Where can a listener, beside your website, are you on any social media channels?
I am. I'm Understanding Nutrition on Instagram, and I'm Jessica Setnick pretty much everywhere else. YouTube,
Beautiful.
LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever else I'm not thinking of. Yeah.
I welcome you to reach out to Jessica if you have someone that you are concerned about.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I will tell you that the eating disorder treatment field is very opaque when you're outside of it. So yes, if I can point someone in the right direction, the right direction to go, let's say. Yes,
Beautiful.
absolutely. I'm going to put a code in my website, podcast. So if anyone wants to look at the Healing Your Inner Eater workbook, use the discount code podcast, and that'll bring the workbook cost down to $15. It's an ebook that you just print off right away.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Like I said, reach out to Jessica. She's a wealth of knowledge on this topic. Thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.